evening, American Patriots, and welcome to another edition of the Douglas Ducote Show. Got many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very, very much. Breaking coming across the wire right now, former President Donald J. Trump is projected to win the New Hampshire primary, and that's been everybody, Fox News, CNN, they're all reporting it. So looks like Trump pulls that off, just like he did the last one over Nikki Haley. What the outcome of that will be in the future, I don't know, folks, because when it comes right down to it, they can choose whoever they want. But with big numbers, I think it's going to be another matchup like we saw the last go around. Tonight's show is started off with full of glitches. We had some technical difficulties trying to get kicked off tonight, but I think we got through that and everything is working fine at the moment. So tonight's show is going to be dedicated the entire hour to the border crisis that we're faced with right now. Same crisis we've been faced with for literally years, just that it's getting worse. And there are people making decisions up in Washington, D.C., to include the Supreme Court, that are saying and doing things that are absolutely, dumbfounding, to be honest with you. Tonight's show may go over the full hour, so we've got that scheduled just in case. We may go to about an hour and 15 minutes. It all depends on how things go. But anyhow, I will kick off by explaining to you a few things here real quick. Last Thursday in D.C., there was a House Homeland Security Committee hearing that was looking into the impeachment of the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Impeachment for committing high crimes and misdemeanors. Basically, his failure to secure our southern border, lying about it over and over again by saying it is secure and testifying under oath in Congress that it is secure when we know it's not, and therefore allowing Mexican drug cartels to use human mules to transport millions of pounds of illegal narcotics into our country, including fentanyl, sex trafficking of women and children, and allowing not only gang members such as MS-13, but also known Islamic terrorists that are on no-fly zone lists that have no other way of getting into the country other than the southern border. They try and fly in, they will be flagged, they will be caught. During this hearing, there was a lady by the name of Josephine Dunn, the mother of a woman who died due to a fentanyl overdose, drugs that came across our southern border. She was there as a witness to testify about what Biden's open border has done to her and her family. And then she was insulted during the hearing by New York Democrat Congressman Dan Goldman. Now, I invited the congressman to come on tonight's show. I never heard back from him, nor did I expect to. And for what it's worth, this show will open an open invitation. Anytime any Democrat would like to come on here to discuss this border and what's happening with the Biden administration and the border, I'll be more than happy to have you on this program. Anyhow, during the hearing, Josephine Dunn shared the story of her daughter and her thoughts on the Biden administration's failure to secure the border. When it was his turn to ask questions, Congressman Goldman then insulted the grieving mother by making the following statement. I want to apologize to you. You are here really to share your story, but being used as a fact witness for an impeachment investigation that obviously, given what you experienced, has been you don't have the background to understand what a high crime and misdemeanor is and how it relates to this. Congressman Goldman was spinning facts about our southern border under Biden administration and Secretary Orlando Mayorkas, trying to paint them as the party that was doing everything in their power to secure the border, and that it was the Republicans that were the reason the border was a disaster. Ms. Dunn snapped back at the congressman by asking him How many times, sir, have you been to the border? To which the answer is none, because he hasn't. And because she put him in checkmate, at that point, he stopped asking her any questions. In fact, he just finished up his statement and moved on. There are many reasons we, as in America, have lost total control of our southern border. But the number one reason is the elected members of the House and Senate under the Democrat Party. The Democrats in Congress outright refuse to go to the border to meet with and talk with the men and women on the front lines, which are the Border Patrol, the local city police, the state police, and the sheriffs. And they refuse to meet with those that have lost a child to illegal aliens and now are called angel families. As with everything else the Democrat Party touches, they break it. And when it comes to American citizens, they place priority of illegals over their own. Now, yes, there have been some Democrats that have gone to the border, such as AOC and Ilhan Omar, Rashid Tlaib, but they do not go down to the actual border and talk with the men and women that are down there trying to protect us. They go to the detention facilities and they make up lies about what's happening there. And they spew hatred towards the Border Patrol and towards ICE and towards those that are trying to do everything in their power to help protect us. They do not, I repeat, they do not take the time to put on their boots, undo their tie, and go stand with the Border Patrol on that border. As many of you know from the documentaries that I did a few years ago when we went down to the border, the number one thing that all law enforcement asked us to get across to you was, why will the Democrat members of the Senate and House not come down here? Why? What are they scared of other than the truth? And we still are faced with that today. Then, if that wasn't enough, since the U.S. government under Joe Biden will not enforce our border laws, the state of Texas has had enough and has started building their own wall with their own money. And in places where the wall is not feasible, in places where there's going to be a wall before they can get wall built, they've been placing razor wire and water barriers with razor wire in the Rio Grande. This upset Joe Biden and his incompetent administration. So they filed lawsuit after lawsuit to force Texas to stop blocking illegals from coming across our southern border. Well, folks, this went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And one would think that the Supreme Court would side with we the people and would say, yes, our border needs to be secure. If the federal government refuses to do their job, then Texas has the right. Well, yesterday, the Supreme Court sided with the Biden administration and allowed the removal of razor wire at the Texas border. This becoming a huge win for the Biden administration in the battle over federal authority in the state. So here are the cold, hard facts. The border is not secure, no matter what you're told. More than 8.5 million illegal aliens, including 1.7 million known gotaways that weren't caught, have entered our country. Tens of thousands of pounds of fentanyl have poured across our border, along with other illegal drugs. And hundreds of individuals on the terror watch list have been caught by border authorities, including 30 since the start of this fiscal year of 2024. Under President Joe Biden, illegally entering the country is no longer a crime. Earlier this month, Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas admitted that over 85% of illegal immigrants apprehended at the border are released into our country. His administration came just weeks after or his admission came just weeks after the December marked the highest number of border encounters, 302,000 illegals. That's the highest number in U.S. history for a single month. With hundreds of thousands of migrants crossing into our country each month, you would think the Biden administration would use all the help it can get. But when states like Arizona and Texas construct their own barriers along the southern border, the Biden administration goes after them in courts. Under this administration, border agents don't put up wire fences. They cut them down to make it easier for illegal immigrants to enter the country. Now, the agents themselves, they don't want this. They are 100% on our side. But they either follow orders or they're fired. And they have to go find a job elsewhere. And that's caused the largest exit of Border Patrol agents to ever leave in the history of our country. Just like with our military troops, the Border Patrol has members quitting and retiring in mass amounts, and the recruitment is at an all-time low. Now, once migrants illegally cross our border, the Biden administration lavishes them with government-funded benefits. In fiscal year 2022 alone, you, the American patriots of this country, the taxpayers, shouldered the cost of $94.3 million worth of medical expenses for illegal aliens. And in fiscal year 2021, Immigration and Customs Enforcement's healthcare arm budgeted more than $74 million from the Department of Veterans Affairs to assist with outside referrals and medical claims processing. At the same time, the VA has more than 1 million veterans waiting for staff to process their claims. You might be wondering, why do Democrats want to leave our border open and make illegals legit? The explanation is straightforward. Blue states know that they're on track to lose congressional seats and federal tax dollars when the next census is tabulated, after hundreds of thousands of Americans have fled their jurisdictions over sky-high taxes and overbearing regulations. By taking in illegal immigrants who count towards each state's census population, thanks to a day one executive order signed by President Biden, Democrats-run states can help offset these losses and retain their congressional seat and federal funding. That helps explain why Democrat states like California, and New York, and Illinois, with combined loss a net total of 2.4 million residents to other states between April of 2020 and July of 2023, extend taxpayer-funded health coverage to illegal immigrants. It also helps explain why Democrats in New York City are willing to shut down high schools and send students back home to remote learning so that their facilities can be used to house illegal immigrants. There are two different bills backed by Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn right now that would block federal dollars from funding health care for illegal aliens. The No VA Resource for Illegal Aliens Act, which would stop the Department of Veterans Affairs from providing taxpayer-funded health care to illegal aliens, and the Protect Medicare Act, which would prevent liberal states like California from using federal funds to subsidize health benefits for illegal aliens. Under no circumstances should taxpayer dollars intended to support American citizens, especially our veterans, be spent on illegal immigrants. These common sense pieces of legislation should receive bipartisan support. That Democrats oppose them and continue to push open border policies tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. Now, all that being said, for those of you that have been watching this show through the years, you know that I used to be a Democrat. And I switched parties under the Reagan administration when I went into the United States military, and I realized, well, I woke up, let's say. The Democrat Party today is not the Democrat Party that I once belonged to. It's not the same party of JFK, for instance. It has been hijacked by far left liberal ideology. And that is also affecting our southern border and just compounding the problem to a degree that is absolutely absurd. So tonight, I wanted to bring on the show two people with firsthand knowledge of what failure to secure our border actually means. My guest for tonight's show is musician and angel parent Dan Gulvich, along with author and speaker, former Sheriff Richard Mack. Dan Gulvich's son, Spencer Gulvich, was senselessly murdered by an illegal alien who had been deported several times after being convicted of committing crimes, including horrible felony-type crimes and crimes of violence. Spencer, his son, was shot in the head while sitting in a car waiting for a stoplight to change in Harrison County, Texas. Dan is an outspoken advocate for securing our border, as you can imagine. This illegal alien had already killed two other people earlier in the day before he got to Dan's son, and then went on to shoot two more people before law enforcement officers took him down. Dan is going to come on tonight to share his story about his son's death and how he and all Angel families feel about the Biden administration's open border policies. And then my second guest is going to be Mr. Richard Mack, has served in a wide variety of roles over the course of his nearly 20-year career in law enforcement, which began in Provo, Utah. After 11 years with the police department there, Mr. Mack decided to return to his childhood turf in Arizona to run for Graham County Sheriff. His campaign took off and he was elected in 1988. During his tenure, federal officers informed the sheriffs of the states that they would be required to enforce the so-called Brady Bill and run background checks at the expense under the law. In 1994, Mr. Mack and 6 other sheriffs from across the county or country challenged the constitutionality of the Brady Bill and ultimately fought it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they won a decision for freedom. 3 years later, in a landmark 5-4 split decision based on the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution, Sheriff Mack won his case. He has also been named Elected Official of the Year by the Arizona-New Mexico Coalition of Counties in 1994. He received the NRA Law Enforcement of the Year Award, introduced into the NRA Hall of Fame, 1995 Cyrus Award, Samuel Adams Leadership Award for the Local Sovereignty Coalition, and Gun Owners of America Defender of the Second Amendment Award. He was a sheriff for 2 terms. Sheriff Mack currently teaches, consults, and empowers people around the country and around the world. He started the Constitutional Sheriff for Peace Officers Association, which educates both citizens as well as sheriffs and peace officers on the Constitution and their limitations of power, according to the Constitution. He will share with us his knowledge and thoughts on our southern border and recent Supreme Court rulings against Texas for Joe Biden. I welcome Dan and Richard to the show. It is with great honor to have them both here to share their personal stories with us. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Glad to be here, Doug.
Thanks. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with both you and Dan. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, and I sure do appreciate it. Dan, let's start with you real quick. First, let me tell you folks, I've known Dan for a few years now, and I will say that as far as I'm concerned, Dan is like a brother to me. We've become very close friends. We text each other at all hours of the night with some of the craziest things you could ever possibly imagine. But Dan is a really good man. He's a patriot, and he's done and is still doing everything in his power to try and help at least expose what's happening on our southern border, and doing so through his own grief. Dan, briefly share with us, from your words, what happened to bring you to where you're at today.
Okay, Douglas, this occurred back on January 31st of 2015. My then 25-year-old son, Spencer Govach, was on his way home. He had just dropped his girlfriend off. It was on a date. The next day was the grand opening of his new music store. And he pulled up to a red light in Northwest Houston, less than a mile from his home. And at this time, a 4-time deported illegal alien that had a long 15-year rap sheet, a violent rap sheet, and had done 5 years in prison for attempted murder, pulled up alongside of Spencer and randomly blew my son's brains out for no reason, just for fun. And he had already taken out a couple other motorists. And, since then, since this tragedy happened, I connected with Maria Espinoza and the Remembrance Project not long after that. And I've been part of that fight ever since. And so we're at 9 years now. And, Maria's taught me a lot of things, and we've gone through the motions of going up to DC. You've seen me and Maria standing next to Trump and standing next to various politicians. And as time went on, it became more and more apparent to me that we were just on a merry-go-round when it comes to the federal government. I have absolutely zero confidence. And, yesterday should underscore that Supreme Court decision that was handed down, the unconstitutional Supreme Court decision, in my opinion, it was handed down. It just underscores how little we can depend on the federal government to do anything about this. But what Maria brought to my attention a few years ago is that the states, and actually specifically elected sheriffs in counties, have a lot more power than you think they do, than you would think. Most people that don't understand this. And so, this has been percolating in my mind for a long time. And I, because of this, I knew we were going to do this. I reached out to Sheriff Mack yesterday, and by a good stroke of luck, he was there and he was on the phone, and he was very informative, and he shared a lot of things with me that I just think that your listeners and the average American that wants something done about this needs to know. That I don't want them to feel, exhausted or just defeated by the fact that obviously our criminal federal government doesn't want to do anything about it. Useless
Right.
Federal government doesn't want to do anything about this. And matter of fact, not only are they AWOL, they're actually not AWOL. They are aiding and abetting this process of the invasion of our country and the total breakdown of our sovereignty. So, but we do have our last line of defense, and I think it's our best line of defense, and I think that's going to fall with the these elected county sheriffs. And so Sheriff Mack has a lot of information on this. He's been in this arena for a long, long time. And I just think that, what Maria was on to and what she kind of showed me, that we're still in the fight and we still have weapons, but we need to understand what those weapons are. And we're all looking to one man. And sure, I'll go pull the lever for Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is just one man. You've got a whole, I don't mince words. I just call it a fleecing cabal, because that's all they do in DC. They fleece us. And I have no confidence at all, but I do believe that on the state level, we can do things. And I personally believe that Governor Abbott has done a lot of kabuki theater in regards to this, but I don't think that he's, and Maria has shown me plenty of evidence that there's a lot more that could be being done that isn't being done. And I think that we need to educate people on this issue of how we go forward and how we approach this conflict. It's what it is. It's a conflict between us and our government, our federal government. And I've been educated on this, that, the supremacy clause that they try to throw at us. The federal government gets to decide everything. That's been misinterpreted. The states, the federal government has an obligation to secure us and secure our sovereignty and protect its citizens, and that means securing the border. But if they fail to do that, which is obviously the case, then the states have not only an option but an obligation. It's Abbott's duty to secure that border, and if that means giving the blessings to these sheriffs and getting behind them and organizing whatever it takes to get the job done, that's what he needs to be doing. I don't see him doing that. The other thing is, I don't know who the Supreme Court swore an oath to after yesterday. I really don't. It wasn't the Constitution of the United States. And you don't have to be a legal scholar, there's to understand. I mean, it's not that ambiguous. The language it's, in the Constitution is, Article 5, Section 4. It's not that hard to read.
Right.
And so that's why I wanted to bring Sheriff Mack, because he can explain this in greater detail and maybe give us some insights on how we need to start thinking about this and move forward, and what we need to get behind, and what we need, and when we need to recognize, again, kabuki theater or political theater that occurs with these politicians. They do things to make it look like they're doing something.
Exactly.
And then when they know that it's not going to get done, they can say, oh, well, I tried. Vote for me again. Well, you didn't try everything.
Right. And Sheriff Mack, please jump in here and explain to us your personal beliefs on what you saw take place yesterday with the Supreme Court. How in depth is that as far as Texas having leeway or not having leeway?
Well, they have complete leeway and they have complete sovereignty. The great state of Texas is sovereign. The great state of Arizona, where I live, is sovereign. We did not surrender our sovereignty or states' rights or our position as state governments to the federal government when we, the states, formed the federal government. We formed them, not the other way around. How is it that we just fought the Revolutionary War and then the states got together and say, yeah, let's make a new central government that will be even more powerful than the king that we just got rid of? So all of this is absurd. And historically speaking, it's even more absurd. And what Roberts and Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett did is absolutely outrageous. They joined the extreme leftists and communist judges on the Supreme Court, two of which were appointed by Obama. That should give you some indication right there.
Right.
And then here we have two supposedly conservative and constitutional judges side with these extremist leftists and walk away from the Constitution and walk away from court precedent and say, yeah, the states have to just take it in the shorts. The federal government has caused a catastrophe, an extremely dangerous catastrophe at the southern border, but there's nothing the states can do about it. They have to just grin and bear it and go along with it. And that's absolutely absurd. And it's beyond stupidity that they could even pretend to have such audacity to rule in this manner and to support Biden in this treason and the destruction of America. This is the destruction of America. And let's be real clear here. This is not accidental. It's not just, oh, well, Biden's kind of lazy and Mayorkas is lazy and they don't want to fix the border. They don't want to fix the border because they are allowing these people by the millions to come into America, and they're willing to sacrifice Biden because he's so old anyway, and they'll take the political heat. Did you notice the number one priority in Iowa And the number one priority in New Hampshire is immigration. It's security at the border, for God's sakes. And what do the Democrats talk about tonight? Which is 4%, and that's abortion. It's way down on the list. And here, because the Democrats have 100% caused this problem to gain a political monopoly across America to where they don't have to cheat on elections anymore because they'll own a monopoly on voting nationwide. And there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it unless we send these people back to Latin America and other countries where they belong. But let me explain the principles and the constitutional order that this all is supposed to follow.
Yes.
First of all, it's Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. Then why does everybody call us a democracy? Because that is a lie. And they think, oh, if we can fool everybody into believing that we're a democracy, then we're going to fool everybody into believing that mobocracy rules. The majority rules in the United States. And thus being the mistake that Roberts and Barrett made in joining the majority in this. And then it says this, and that the federal government, quote, shall protect each of them, each state, against invasion. And so if the federal government is supposed to protect every state from invasion, and if they don't do it, who can? And so obviously the states retain that power, and I'll show you where that is also I'll do it right now. The 10th Amendment, which I sued the federal government. I started a major lawsuit against the Clinton administration. Hey, I sued the Clintons and lived to tell about it. So that's a miracle in and of itself right there. But here's Amendment 10. And this is extremely powerful. And this guarantees state sovereignty, the 10th Amendment. And I guess Roberts and Barrett didn't know anything about this amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, get this, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And so when we formed the new federal government, what did we do? We delegated powers. We delegated. We didn't give them. We didn't surrender them. We delegated. And only a boss, a supervisor, can delegate to other employees.
Right.
We founded the new central government to be our servant in certain matters of international affairs and military and keeping, obviously trying to keep the peace. But if you go through the Constitution, their powers are enumerated. They're few and limited and discrete. And they don't even total 40. But we, the states, are the ones that delegated those to the federal government. And if they don't do them, we can undelegate them and take them back. We didn't surrender state sovereignty to them. We never would have. In fact, the founding fathers were a little bit hesitant. Some of them were downright against forming a new central government for this very reason, because they did not want to surrender their sovereignty to people who have a habit of exercising unrighteous dominion and stealing and usurping power that is not constitutionally allowed. So the key word in the 10th Amendment that we sued on is delegated. And if they don't do it, then you know. And again, when Ben Franklin got out of the Constitutional Convention and they had just finished promulgating the Constitution, a friend of his in his neighborhood, a lady, came up and asked him and said, Dr. Franklin, what kind of government did you leave us? And he said, a republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. So there's two things there. We, the people, are in charge. That's the first three words of the Constitution. We must wake up. We must stand against the tyranny and the treason that is destroying our country at the southern border. They are doing that. The Democrats are doing that to put these 40 million people that are here illegally on the voter rolls. And they think after that there's nothing we can do. Well, folks, we better wake up and get something done right away, or it is going to be too late. So this is my Supreme Court case. And I worked hours and hours studying my case. And the Cornell University Law School did the best review of it. And I studied it, and I put the highlights, the best points in this little pocket-sized booklet. And all of you should go to my website and do two things. You should get the book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. It's only 50 pages, real easy to read. It's cheap. These are only you get 3 of these for $5 or something. They're really cheap. But this is the most powerful Supreme Court case on the 10th Amendment and state sovereignty that you'll ever see in your life. This is the most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of America. And I'll prove that to you right now. First, Justice Scalia wrote the decision. So that should tell you a lot right there. But he also put it this way. He told us, he warned us that he was only going to do this decision through a historical perspective. He said the answer to the CLEOs, and CLEO stands for Chief Law Enforcement Officer. Do you know who's sued on this? Chief law enforcement officers that they called the sheriffs that did this. Remember, sheriffs did this case, no one else. And they called us the CLEOs. And when you get the federal government calling us the CLEOs, we sued against the Brady Bill, which was a gun control measure that the federal government said that the president, Clinton, and the Congress said, well, we'll get the sheriffs to enforce this for us. And if they don't want to, we'll threaten to arrest them. The Brady Bill has a provision that we would stay a year in prison or a $10,000 fine or both if we don't do what they tell us. And we don't answer to the president. We don't answer to the federal government. We don't answer to the governor or to a committee. We answer to the people.
To the people.
And the sheriff is the only position in this country in law enforcement that is elected. And he answers to the people, the real power source. And so now get this one. This is a quote from my decision. Scalia says that we must seek this decision from a historical understanding. So Scalia simply takes us through a history lesson. And man, is this powerful. First, he says, we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Now, if you allowed me a little leeway, this is saying the federal government is not our boss.
Right.
And they say that numerous times in this decision. And then he says, residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. Well, what kind did they have then? It says right here, but only discrete enumerated ones. You can go through the Constitution and enumerate or number the powers and authorities that belong to the federal government. And then if it's not in the Constitution, who does it belong to? Pursuant to the 10th Amendment, that belongs to the states or to the people. And folks, this is so powerful. Let me show you another one. The great innovation of this design, in other words, our Constitution, is that our citizens would have 2 political capacities, one state and one federal. Get this, each protected from incursion by the other. It's the state's job to protect us. And Scalia then reiterates that by quoting Federalist Paper 51, written by none other than James Madison. And he says this, hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other. So this ridiculous decision yesterday by Roberts and Barrett is an absolute audacious monstrosity and huge miscarriage of justice. They violated court precedent. They violated the Constitution, just as Dan said earlier. And it's time we take this back. And I will tell you flat out, Abbott does not have to follow this. Is Biden and his administration, are they following the Constitution?
No.
Hell no. And he just lost. Biden just lost a decision on student loans, and he's given away taxpayer dollars to pay back so student loans don't have to pay back their loans. And then what about me? I put myself through college, worked my way through college, paid for it myself, and then equal protection under the law says they got to pay me what they're paying them.
Right.
But they won't, because he's just buying votes. Now, let me get this last, and there's all sorts of crazy, wonderful, beautiful principles in here. But I'm going to give you one more. And it talks about the supremacy clause that Dan brought up earlier. Scalia addresses that in here. And he says the supremacy clause doesn't give supremacy to the federal government. The federal government has to follow the Constitution just like the rest of us. The principles of liberty here come first. And so then he says this. This is Justice Scalia talking in this most amazing decision. Quote, "But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions." And then he closes that same paragraph. It protects us from, quote, "the crisis of the day." The crisis of the day that our own federal government causes, and then they come back with a solution that is always detrimental to our personal liberty and to our Constitution. Folks, if we lose our Constitution, we lose America. And America is on her deathbed, and we better get busy. And I'm asking each of you to do two things. Go to my website and get the book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, and get dozens of these and hand them out to public officials, federal agents, your sheriff, and let's get these people trained, and let's get these people on board with the principles of liberty that America was founded upon. The other one, I'm asking each of you and all of your listeners to become members of the CSPOA posse. This is what keeps us going. We are, and I invite anybody to please correct me on this, but no one has yet. We believe, and I believe, unhesitatingly, that the CSPOA, and CSPOA isn't the important thing. Freedom is the important thing. We're just an avenue to get there. We are the only peaceful and effective solution we have left. Now, there's other great groups out there. And like your radio show, this program, we need education and we need the truth getting out there. Right. But as far as boots on the ground, your sheriffs are it. And if they can form posses and work with we the people in doing what Madison said, erecting the barriers against the encroachments of the federal authority, we've got to do that. And the best defense for that is a sheriff who knows and understands his obligation to interpose on behalf of the American people and defend them against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. It's sad our own federal government has become that enemy. Abbott and any other state has no obligation whatsoever to go along with this ridiculous decision that was rendered yesterday.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that the sheriffs in Texas in the different counties could get together, like you say, form a posse, and actually remove the federal government from the state, or would they have to separate from the union?
No, they don't have to separate. I tell you, if Texas does secede from the union, I'll be the first one to move there because I think that's necessary. They've threatened it before, and even Abbott has threatened it before. Right. But no, we could tell the federal government to get lost. And there's been many times where sheriffs have stood up to the federal government. Every time they've won. I'm afraid, though, that this decision today is going to embolden them and bolster them somewhat. And like I said, this is a peaceful process, but we're not asking the sheriff to arrest them or even banish them. Just render them irrelevant and just say, if you do this in my county, as I did when the EPA and Army Corps of Engineers came in my county and wouldn't let us fix a bridge, and we tried to fix the bridge, and they threatened to arrest the county commissioners and all the maintenance workers on that bridge. Well, I told them, I said, you're not going to arrest anybody in my county, and if you try, I'm going to arrest you. Well, they left town and never came back, and we fixed the bridge. Okay,
No.
That's what it usually is. You stand in the way and you don't move unless they do, but you stand in their way and you don't allow them to victimize or oppress or abuse the citizens. And you don't allow any of the rights of the people to be violated by the federal government. That is the bottom line.
We've seen several cases across the country where sheriffs have actually done just that. They've stood down to the federal government and allowed them. I don't know if it's because they side more with them or if it's just they're uneducated in what the actual Constitution says.
They don't know any better, but they also want to keep their federal grants. And we also teach at the CSPOA, do not take the filthy bribe money from Washington, D.C. Do not do it. It's a big mistake. And it buys off. It buys them off. And sometimes those bribes work.
Yeah. Maria brought this to my attention today, and I'm sure Sheriff Mack knows this, that there's this myth that the federal government has exclusive power on immigration. That needs to be debunked, because the only thing that the Constitution grants them is the right to enforce it's the naturalization, which there's a sort of a litmus test of what qualifications to become an American, but they have no exclusive right to actually do the enforcement of the border.
No, especially when they don't do it right, Dan. If they don't do it,
the federal government, the states, it's not an option that they have it, like the Texas Constitution. It's an obligation. And,
the bottom line is,
with these sheriffs,
the bottom line is, what are we after? What are the sheriffs after? What are the states after? They're after protecting the people. And if the federal government's not going to do it, for God's sakes, we have to. Of course we do.
Yeah.
And to me, the saddest part of this, if you look at the bigger picture here, the federal government has managed to strip away the purpose of the Second Amendment in our Constitution to where if we, the people, tried to utilize that, we would be labeled as terrorists and arrested and put away and locked up.
Yep.
So that was, I think, freedom of speech.
Let me add something to
that. Went after, but when they went after the Second Amendment to where you can't utilize that, I mean, think about it. People can't even you can't get on your phones and text each other about it. You can't talk on the phone about it. You can't send text messages about it or emails about it without the federal government finding out about it and coming in and arresting everybody involved.
Right. But sheriffs have twice in our country in just the last 10 years, since Sandy Hook, that was 12, so maybe 13 years, they have defended the Second Amendment and won. Over 500 sheriffs stood against Obama when he tried to initiate more gun control after Sandy Hook. And then just recently, about a year ago, 500 more sheriffs stand against, and especially the Utah sheriffs were unanimous. 29 sheriffs signed off on a resolution that we warn Biden that if they send any more federal agents in our counties to confiscate guns from law-abiding citizens, it will not be tolerated, and it's not going to happen. So sheriffs have done more, and we stopped the Brady Bill, and we stopped the Brady Bill movement, which was 4 more laws that were going to completely destroy the Second Amendment. People don't understand how much our lawsuit changed American history. Right. And the sheriffs are very united on protecting the Second Amendment. And now we want them to unite on all of them. The right to peaceably assemble, freedom of speech, and no excessive fines or bail or cruel and unusual punishment. And then especially protecting The Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure, and that warrants and probable cause are required. Does the IRS do they ever use probable cause and duly signed warrants when they go after us? Hell no. They're a law unto themselves. And these things must stop. And now all the bureaucracies are trying to act like the IRS. Well, the IRS can do it. We can do it. And so the Sixth Amendment of due process, all the points of due process are in the Sixth Amendment. Am I allowed a public and speedy trial in a lot of places in this country? You're not. And so we could go through the whole thing, but the main thing is understanding the protections in the 10th Amendment. And folks, once again, go to my website at CSPOA.org. Become a member of the CSPOA posse. Join us. Make us more powerful. Make us better funded. And make this something that every sheriff's going to want to be a part of. When you go to him, and you need to go to your sheriff and say, we want to form a defense system against the onslaught of the federal government here. What are you going to do if they come for our guns? What are you going to do if we're overrun with illegal aliens? What's going to happen? What are we going to do? Abbott has made a huge mistake. He should not, this is illegal. He should not have bused illegal aliens to New York and Chicago. That's against the law. He could have sent them south, but sending them north is actually criminal. And I know what he was trying to do, but he needs to correct it. And these people need to go on buses back. And we need to get hundreds and hundreds of buses and do that everywhere and start sending these people back, or it's going to change America. It's going to destroy America. And we're not going to be able to do it. It might be too late, but it's not yet. And we need to join. And if the sheriffs of this country will unite behind this and say, we will not comply, and our citizens will not go along with anything that violates the sacred United States Constitution, which is there to protect our God-given liberties and civil rights.
How many sheriffs do you have right now currently that are supporting you guys?
Probably about 300. We've really done a lot of extensive training recently. We've done some very good trainings and zigzagging the state of Texas the last 3 years. And so we think we have the sheriffs there ready to go. The problem with the sheriffs in Texas or all the other border states is they simply do not have the resources. And I question how long a posse could remain at the border to provide that type of protection. But
Right.
The sheriffs can call out the militias. They can call out their own posse. They can deputize anyone they want, and then hopefully get the governors to help them with some resources and making sure that how are you going to feed all those people? How are you going to rotate shifts? And where are they going to live? And how are they going to protect themselves? And will they get too hot during the summer? And so on and so forth. So
yeah, the logistics behind it is huge, but
governors
it's
can
something
call
that
out
could be done.
the National Guard.
Yeah.
It can be done.
Yeah. And the National Guard is something that's been underused. We're never going to get the active
sure.
duty military down there the way it needs to be, but
It should be.
the border states need to be bringing in their national and rotating them all out down there. Not just to
Amen.
babysit or do the admin work, but put them on the
Right.
border with their weapons to do the same thing.
And turn them around. For the 1,800 miles of the border, turn these people around and tell them to go back.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%. And I will put in the folks. I'll put in the description of this video once it goes up as a regular video when the show's over with. The links to Mr. Mack's website where you guys can go there and join this, and also get the pamphlets and educate yourself and educate your sheriffs in your counties across this country.
Yeah.
Which is the most important part of, I believe, this whole discussion tonight, is we need to make sure that those in positions of power understand what their power is, because sadly, in many cases, they don't. And that needs to be pushed on.
And let me ask you a real serious question. if the sheriffs work for the executive branch, if one or both of the other branches, the legislative or the judicial, in this particular case, the judicial, if the judicial wittingly violates the Constitution, do we have an obligation to go along? That's obvious
We
as
have an
hell.
obligation
To oppose it and to stand against it
Exactly.
and correct it.
Yeah,
That's right.
I agree.
That's our
Yeah.
obligation.
That's our obligation. That's what we promised to do in our oath. We promised to uphold and defend the Constitution. If the judicial branch violates it, we didn't say, and we will do whatever the judicial branch tells us. We don't work for the judicial branch.
Yeah.
We don't work for the legislative branch. We are the enforcers. We are the enforcers of the law. We are the executors of the law. And the supreme law of the land, the United States Constitution, and specifically the Bill of Rights, and we are the protectors of the Republic and defenders of liberty.
Very well said.
Good stuff.
Sir, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a honor and a pleasure to meet you. I hope that you'll come back on the show again, because I'd love to have you on for just yourself for a full hour to go more in depth into this. But your knowledge tonight is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I
Dan,
very
thank
much
you.
appreciate
It's a
it.
pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, sir. Dan, I want to ask you a quick question to share with the audience here. I know what the answer is, but I want them to understand this. How many House members or Senate members of the Democrat Party do you know of have reached out to angel families to talk about the border?
Zero.
And how many
Zero.
Republicans?
Well, I've had, I'll tell you, I had Mike McCall about 3 weeks after this happened, called me, and he wanted me to meet him in Austin the next day to do a press conference about some sort of, again, Kabuki theater bill that he had lined up. And he hung up the phone, and 10 minutes later went down to the Senate floor and voted for Obama's executive amnesty. And I called his office and told him, "Don't call me back. I won't be meeting." Well, I didn't say it so nicely, but we don't have a lot of allies, and I feel like we're just putting our head up against the wall with the federal government. I think that it is a plutocratic, oligarch-controlled fleecing cabal. That's what I call it. I call the Capitol now the crapital, because that's really what it is. It's a crapital, and we got an obvious lunatic or just nut job in the White House. He doesn't even know where he's at half the time. And then we saw the third branch of the government. They put on display quite clearly yesterday whose side they're on, and I am perplexed. It's just mind-boggling that they could issue a ruling that is so contrary to what the Constitution says. And again, you don't have to be a legal scholar to read these things in the Constitution. Some of them are very unambiguous. And
it's plain English.
The thing, they just want to make us think that, hey, that's their call about this immigration issue or this invasion issue. It's not. And that's why I wanted to bring Sheriff Mack on, because we've got to educate people. They can't just go pull a lever every 2 years and expect something's going to happen because they voted for some congressman or representative or president. Washington is like, I feel like they're the enemy at this point. I feel like they're making war on us. I mean, well, they are.
Well, this administration has single-handedly turned the Department of Justice and the FBI and the Homeland Security as their police force to back up their ideology, not to protect we the people.
Yeah, it's their they're not putting any of the American. I mean, it's like we talked about the other day. they'll spend billions of dollars, and of course it gets recycled back through the defense contractors to the politicians on other people's borders, billions
Right.
and billions, hundreds of billions, while at the same time aiding and abetting a massive clothed pivot invasion at our southern border that is destructive, that has cost some thousands and thousands of Americans their lives. And they have.
We'd be better
I don't know
suited
what else
if it was another nation's military coming across, because therefore we the people would be able to take up arms and run them back. But in this scenario, then we become domestic terrorists.
Well, Douglas, how do we know that another nation's military isn't coming across?
Well, we do believe. I believe firmly that China is setting this up and pushing this. There's so many people from China that we're catching.
Yeah. Yeah, if I was the enemy of the United States and I was watching this border thing, I'm like, that would be a no-brainer. Okay,
Right.
Yeah. If they're going to be that dumb, then let's go ahead and send our assets up through the, but well, we can. If I was Iran or someplace like that, I guess you could get those guys, and they can pass as somebody from South America or whatever. And if you look at these videos that Michael Yon and people like that send us, 90% of these people aren't women and children, and
they're military age men,
right?
And they're not wearing clothing as if they just came across millions or hundreds of thousands of miles. They look like they just got out of a fucking hotel room.
I guarantee that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that is treason against us, that our government, our lawless criminal government in DC, is aiding and abetting this. If you can't call them an enemy, then take that damn word out of the dictionary.
I agree 100%. Dan, thank you very much, brother. I sure do appreciate it. Every time I've had you on, you've been a wonderful, great knowledge of helping at least my listeners understand where we're at. And I will continue to have you on, brother, in the future. And
thank you, Doug.
Once things settle down more, now that I've gotten moved, we are going to go back down there to the border, and I'm going to have you with me, and we're going to go out and we're going to expose and show the people more of what's happening down there. Dan, It's been a pleasure, brother. And thank you so much also for helping to bring Sheriff Mack on here tonight to discuss this in the constitutional part with what we're experiencing.
Well, God bless, Douglas. I appreciate all the work. You keep up the good work. You're still in the fight. You're still a soldier. And
thank you, brother.
It's very much appreciated by us that love the country and still want to hang on to our freedom and, our unalienable rights. And you're still a big player in that. So I much appreciate it.
Thank you very much, brother. And I'll talk to you soon.
God bless.
God bless. So I hope that you all were able to understand and read through, I guess, be able to see the small print of tonight's show. And that is for you to grasp the concept that we, the people, through our sheriffs that we elect, control this country, at least each individual state. It's not the FBI. It's not the Department of Justice. It's not Homeland Security. It's not who we put in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It is we, the people, electing sheriffs for our counties. And we've got to be able to get them to understand the power that they hold. And I don't believe most of them have not even an inkling of how powerful they actually are. Look, the sheriffs in the state of Texas could band together tonight get together, start planning it, putting it together, all the logistics of it, get the state to fund it through Abbott, along with the National Guard of Texas, and run the federal agents out of the state and once and for all secure that southern border and stop this tragedy that is happening across this country. For every single minute of the day that this is allowed to go on, more and more Americans die based on the Democrats' ideology and what they've done to our Constitution and are getting away with doing to our states. So it's drastically important that the sheriffs across the nation understand what their powers are, what they were elected to do. That's got to be pushed forward. And it's up to me and you to do it. You know, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, and I truly do believe this. If we lose Texas to the Democrats, it's over, folks. When Texas falls, the United States falls, the Constitution falls. And sadly, what I see happening, and many other people do as well, there's going to come a point, if things don't turn around soon, where Texas is going to be run and controlled throughout with Congress and the Senate and their governorship, Democrats. And God help us when that happens. Just like what we're currently faced with right now with the United States of America and this current administration, the most incompetent, prior to Joe Biden, I'll be 62 years old in April. Okay, so I've been around a while and I've seen a lot of shit from Democrats and Republicans. I've served under both Democrats and Republican presidents. Up until Joe Biden, the most incompetent, at least in my time, the most incompetent president to ever set foot in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue was Jimmy Carter. He was a weak, spineless man. Joe Biden comes along and makes him look like Ronald Reagan. That's how incompetent this man, Joe Biden, is. Most of that happens to do with his mental capacity and the fact that he is drastically suffering from mental illness because of his age and his mental decline. He has put people in positions of power that are not qualified to do their job. He put people in positions of power based on their sexuality, based on the fact that they're a drag queen, things of that nature, not because of their ability, their education, their experience to help do the right thing for we the people. This administration has become the worst. And it's because it's infiltrated by the far left liberal ideology. And where has it also went? Not only has it infiltrated all of our government when we elect people like Joe Biden, but it's happening in your hometown, all across this country, in the schools, starting from kindergarten all the way up through college. Liberal ideology is being spread like the worst virus to ever infect planet Earth. And if we don't turn that around, it doesn't matter how many more times we get 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the House with the Senate. The generations to come will destroy us from within, literally, because they're being taught, physically taught right now, that our flag is racist, that white men are racist, that this country was founded on racist principles, that our forefathers were racist. And we could throw in the word bigot as well. Their warped ideology of what this nation is from its founding to today is absolutely 100% wrong, horrible, dangerous. And it's spreading more and more every single day. You know, for many years, Republicans have said, I'm going to be bigger than the Democrats. I'm not going to stoop to their level when they say horrible things about us. We're going to be the bigger people here. What did it get you? What did it get you, Republicans? When you allowed, when we had 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and we had the House, and we had the Senate, and we allowed people like Nancy Pelosi, for instance, to spew her hatred against Republicans and a Republican president. And we just didn't do anything about it. We went, we're above that. Then it spread, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger to people like Alihan Omar and Rashid Tlaib and AOC. The new Democrats that are coming on board are hell-bent on the destruction of the United States of America and everything that we've been built on. For God's sake, they're taking God out of our schools and inviting drag queens and Satan. It's also happening in our courthouses across this country, where the left was hell-bent on removing anything to do with God or the Bible on display in courthouses. And then they worked a deal, a bipartisan deal. You can keep it as long as you do the same with Satan. Are you kidding me? Who the hell bends to that type? You may as well take yourself out of the equation. Folks, we're in a time right now in this country where it's going to go away. The freedoms, so many people are just you're so used to the norm of living your day-to-day activities and taking kids to ball games or cheerleader practice, going to work, coming home, eating, going to church, whatever, your day-to-day activities, that you're not paying attention to what's happening internally to the country. And I'm here to tell you, like many others, whether you watch it here on YouTube or you watch them on Rumble or X, formerly Twitter, or Truth Social, there are others like myself that are trying to get the message out there and let you know how dangerous this is that we're treading in right now. It's great white sharks and alligators on steroids and acid, for crying out loud, waiting to eat us alive. And it's growing every day. It's going to be the destruction of this country if we don't wake the hell up. When these elections roll around in November, do not go to the polls by yourself. Bring someone with you. Bring friends. Bring family. Tell your family how important it is that they vote. If they're not registered, help them get registered, for crying out loud. Men and women bled and died for that freedom, for our Constitution, for our flag. They put their lives on the line to give us that freedom that sadly too many Americans take for granted. And that has to change. That mindset has to change. We can do better. I know we can. I've seen this country in some bad times. Many of you have as well. Some of you that are older than I am, that are in your 70s or 80s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've experienced it as well. But what's happening right now within the Democrat Party is an absolute building of an enemy against we the people, to destroy us, to stop us from continuing think no further than MAGA, Make America Great Again. That slogan to the left is evil. How in the flying hell is that an evil saying? Make America great again. Those people don't know what America was like in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, or hell, since slavery went away. No, they don't know. They want to say that make America great again means we bring back slavery and we take away rights of women. And they're teaching that to our youth as I speak. And it's not true. It is up to me and you to stand up against this horrible, hateful bigotry that is happening and attacking we the people. And it starts by voting, by sharing videos like this, by going to other conservatives that you follow on social media and sharing their platforms and telling your friends and family about it. Most of you don't get your news anymore from the mainstream news media because it's all fake news. And it's people like me and many others that are on social media that are trying to weed through the crap to bring you factual information that you need to know as an American patriot. I serve my country, this country, with honor, both in law enforcement and in the military. I do this today because I love this country. But I hate, literally hate, this government when it is controlled by Democrats. A once party that I belonged to, that I was proud member of, is no longer the same party. It is the party of evil and destruction of our country. The Democrat members of our House and our Senate and this administration are the enemy of we the people. And they have managed to put together in their equation the Department of Justice and the FBI and the Homeland Security to rule over you and me. We can't let that stand. And we must speak up and be loud, and we must do the right thing to save our country before it's too damn late. I would like to thank my guests again, Dan Govich and Sheriff Mack, for coming on the program. Two great American patriots. I hope that what they share with you tonight, you will take on throughout the rest of your life and remember their stories. They will come on this show many times to come. Trust me. Dan has been on the show before. Dan will be on the show many more times to come, because the more you know about the pain and agony that angel families went through and continue to go through this very second, the stronger you can become against the Democrat evilness. that is taking control of this country. And the more you hear from people like Sheriff Mack that can share with you the powers of the Constitution and what the sheriffs of this nation are capable of doing, the more you can help educate those that don't. Folks, as always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our first responders, their families, our Angel families, our Blue and Gold Star families, and our country. May God bless the United States of America more now than ever before. And if for some reason you're new and you don't know what Angel families are or Blue and Gold Star families are, I challenge you to look that up because they need our support. Why? Because the Democrats of this country in power, in the House, in the Senate, and 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue are pissing on the graves of their loved ones, and that is unacceptable. It is by me, and damn it, it better be by every one of you too. We can only do this if we do it together. Thank you. God bless you. And I'll see you back here Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. Till then, if something breaks between now and then, I'll do a video about it or I'll do a live show about it. Other than that, hope that you have a blessed evening, whatever you're going to be doing. Be safe. Say hello to your friends, your family. Tell them how much you love them and you appreciate them. And if you do nothing else, get right with your God and pray. Thank you.